Natalie Matthews Ramo. The first time I met Alex Kaczynski was in 1996. I was clerking for the Chief Judge of the Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, and there was an orientation for new clerks in San Francisco. One of my co-clerks and I were introduced to the already legendary, lifetime tenured young judge at a reception, and we talked for a while. I cannot recall what we talked about. I remember only feeling quite small and very dirty. Without my prompting, my former co-clerk described this interaction in an email to me this week. "He completely ignored me and appeared to be undressing you with his eyes," he wrote. "I had never seen anyone ogle another person like that, and still have not seen anything like it. Was so uncomfortable to watch, and I wasn't even the subject of the stare." The first time I spoke to Judge Kaczynski on the phone came weeks later, when I called his chambers late at night. Our judge had a sitting in the same city as Judge Kaczynski, and I had made plans with one of Kaczynski's then-clerks, an old college friend, to meet late at night for a drink. When I called his chambers, Judge Kaczynski himself answered the phone. I introduced myself and asked to speak to his clerk, explaining that we had plans to meet up. The judge asked where I was. I said I was in my hotel room. Then he said, "What are you wearing?" I was taken aback, in part because nobody talked this way in real life. I surprised myself by reporting what Kaczynski had said to my judge, who had always been kind and courtly and old-fashioned to the point of being almost saintly in my eyes. He looked horrified, as I am sure he was. But it was 1996, and the relationships between law clerks and their judges are mostly built on worshipful silence. There is no other work relationship left in America that is comparable. Which is, as it happens, part of the problem. For the 20 intervening years, I have promised myself that if Judge Kaczynski was ever to appear before the Senate Judiciary Committee for a Supreme Court confirmation hearing, I would testify about the dozens of conversations I'd had over the years with other clerks and lawyers about Kaczynski's behavior, about the strange hypersexualized world of transgressive talk and action that embodied his chambers. It turns out, it didn't take a confirmation hearing to kick off this conversation. On deck. 8. The Washington Post published the stories of 6 women, 2 of them, Heidi Bond and Emily Murphy, brave enough to go on the record, alleging that Kaczynski had harassed them when they clerked or otherwise worked for him, or when they clerked for another Ninth Circuit judge. Bond says Kaczynski pulled up pornography on a computer in his chambers and asked if it aroused her. One accuser spoke of him looking her body up and down in a less than professional way. Another reported about his fixation on the idea that she should exercise naked. In a statement to the Post, Kaczynski said, "I have been a judge for 35 years and during that time have had over 500 employees in my chambers. I treat all of my employees as family and work very closely with most of them. I would never intentionally do anything to offend anyone, and it is regrettable that a handful have been offended by something I may have said or done." After the Post story was published, he additionally told the Los Angeles Times, "I don't remember ever showing pornographic material to my clerks, and if this is all they are able to dredge up after 35 years, I am not too worried." He also noted that Bond had written a romance novel that featured very torrid sex. Kaczynski has not replied to Slate's request for comment as of publication time. "I never reported to Judge Kaczynski during my tenure at the Ninth Circuit, so my story is different. Nevertheless, I believe Bond and Murphy, because the pattern they describe is a familiar one. It is hard to put into words what felt off to me about Judge Kaczynski's behavior. To start, I would suggest you watch this infamous video from 1968 of the future judge delivering an egregious kiss to his prospective date on an episode of The Dating Game. Nothing like that happened to me. But perhaps it helps you understand why, even though he never put his mouth directly on mine or clasped my throat, his consistent way of greeting me, with a kiss on the cheek that always lasted a few seconds too long, in front of colleagues I respected if not revered, so prolonged that others noted it, was unwanted. And yet I still don't quite know the word for it. In so many of his interactions with me, and conversations around me, Judge Kaczynski has always gone one step over the line of appropriate sexual discourse. At the same time, he pushes a worldview that suggests there is no such thing as a line. Both personally and in his jurisprudence, I don't think he believes that porn is porn, or that sex